Krylor Virion had always believed his life would follow a path he chose himself. As the young prince of Virion, a planet known for its advanced technology and strict traditions, he was surrounded by luxury, knowledge, and the constant expectations of his family. The Virion royal family was highly respected across the galaxy. They were known for their wisdom, discipline, and strategic alliances. But Krylor, despite his royal upbringing, valued freedom and personal choice above all. He wanted to explore the galaxy, meet new beings, and discover life beyond the walls of the palace. On the morning of the grand family gathering, Krylor awoke feeling unusually tense. His father, King Virion, had sent out invitations to every noble family on the planet. Rumors had spread that something important would be announced. The palace shimmered with decorations, silver banners that reflected Virion sunlight, crystal chandeliers that sparkled like stars, and a garden blooming with exotic plants from neighboring planets. Everything looked beautiful and orderly, but Krylor could feel a storm brewing beneath the surface. As the nobles arrived, Krylor moved quietly through the palace halls, trying to avoid their curious glances. He was accustomed to attention, but today felt different. His stomach twisted with unease, the hall filled with dignitaries, advisors, and distant relatives, all dressed in their finest attire. Conversations floated through the air, filled with polite greetings, whispers, and speculation about the king's announcement. Finally, King Virion appeared. The hall fell silent instantly. His presence alone commanded respect. He was tall and dignified, his silver hair glinting under the light. His voice, deep and steady, echoed through the grand hall. "My family, my people," the king began. "Today I make an important announcement. Krylor, my son, has reached the age when he must choose a life partner. However, this choice will not be left to him alone." Krylor's stomach sank. He had expected many things from his father: strict lessons, long speeches, and high expectations. But a forced marriage? That had never crossed his mind. King Virion continued, "You, Krylor, shall marry Selene, a human-alien hybrid woman from the planet Earthia. She is intelligent, capable, and comes from a lineage that can strengthen the bonds between our worlds." The room erupted in whispers. Some nobles nodded politely, seeing the political advantage. Others exchanged skeptical looks, unsure of what to think about a human-alien hybrid entering the royal family. Krylor's mind raced. Human-alien hybrids were rare and often misunderstood. They were known for their intelligence, strength, and resilience, but many Virions considered them unpredictable, strange, or even inferior. Krylor could barely believe what he was hearing. "What?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly. "You're arranging my marriage? Without even asking me?" The king's face remained calm, almost unyielding. "It is not just about personal desire, Krylor. It is about our family, our people, and the future of Virion. Selene is a unique individual, and her alliance with our family will bring honor and stability." Krylor's mind spun with questions. He didn't know this Selene. He didn't know if she shared his values, his dreams, or even his personality. How could he be forced into a life with someone he had never met? The thought felt suffocating. He could hear the whispers around him. A human alien? How strange. Can Krylor really accept this? I wonder what Selene looks like. These words, although quiet, cut deep. Krylor had always been careful about appearances and reputation. He hated the idea of being judged by association, of being seen as weak or foolish for following his father's decision. After the announcement, Krylor left the hall as soon as he could, walking through the palace gardens in frustration. The air smelled of alien flowers, sweet and slightly sharp. The sun reflected off the crystal fountains, but Krylor barely noticed. He felt trapped. He had spent his life preparing for challenges, learning strategy, and exploring the galaxy, but he had never prepared for this. A marriage that wasn't his choice felt like a cage. As he walked, he tried to imagine Selene. He knew almost nothing about her except that she was a human-alien hybrid, and that her presence was meant to strengthen political bonds. But the idea of sharing his life with someone entirely unknown was terrifying. Would she understand him? Would she accept his world? Or would she be as alien in personality as she was in appearance? Krylor's thoughts were interrupted by a young servant bringing him a message. It was an invitation for a private meeting with Selene, who had just arrived on Virion. She would be staying in a guest wing of the palace until the marriage was formalized. Krylor's heart raced. This was it, the first encounter. He didn't know whether to feel excitement, fear, or resentment. That evening, Kryler arrived at the guest wing. The corridors were illuminated by soft blue lights that reflected off polished floors. He was greeted by a tall, graceful figure, Celine. She stood calmly, her posture straight, eyes shining with curiosity. She looked human, but there was something undeniably different about her. Her movements were precise, almost fluid, and her presence carried a quiet strength. Kryler noticed immediately that she did not appear intimidated by the palace, the guards, or even the prince himself. "Prince Kryler," she said politely, bowing slightly. "It is an honor to meet you." Kryler struggled to respond. He had imagined countless scenarios in his head, none of which prepared him for her calm, confident demeanor. The honor is mine, I guess," he said, trying to hide his confusion. For the next hour they exchanged cautious words. Kryler asked about her journey from Earthia, her life before arriving on Virion, and her experiences as a hybrid. Celine answered with honesty and clarity. She spoke of challenges she had faced, of prejudice, but also of her determination to succeed. Kryler listened, surprised by her intelligence and composure. She was nothing like the timid or unsure person he had expected. Despite himself, Kryler began to feel a flicker of respect. This woman, who had been presented as a political tool, was proving to be strong, thoughtful, and brave. He realized that the rumors he had heard about hybrids, about their strangeness and unpredictability, were not entirely fair. Celine was different, yes, but in a way that was impressive rather than threatening. Yet Kryler's frustration did not disappear. He still felt trapped by his father's decision. He could not ignore the fact that he had no choice in this arrangement. He needed space to think, to process, and to understand how this marriage might shape his life. That night, as Kryler gazed at the twin moons of Virion from his balcony, he wondered what the future held. Would he find friendship, respect, or something deeper with Celine? Or would this marriage be nothing but an obligation, a life forced upon him against his will? The questions swirled in his mind like the winds of the distant storms on the horizon. One thing was certain. His life was about to change in ways he could not yet imagine. And whether he liked it or not, the journey with Celine was only beginning. Kryler went to sleep that night with a mixture of unease and curiosity. He did not know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing. Meeting Celine had already begun to challenge everything he thought he knew about alliances, strength, and the unexpected potential of someone he had been forced to accept. The next morning, Kryler awoke with a restless mind. He could still feel the memory of Celine's calm and confident presence lingering in his thoughts. The sun of Virion rose gently over the horizon, casting soft light over the palace, yet Kryler felt anything but peaceful. He knew that today he would have his first official meeting with Celine, not a quick greeting, but a true conversation, a chance to gauge her character. As he made his way through the palace corridors, he noticed the whispers of servants and nobles who had heard about the previous night's encounter. Some admired Celine's courage and grace. Others were doubtful, questioning whether a human-alien hybrid could ever fit into the traditions of Virion royalty. Kryler's steps echoed in the hall, a reminder of the weight of expectation on his shoulders. When he reached the palace gardens, he saw Celine waiting. She was already moving gracefully among the flowering plants, her hands lightly touching the petals as if she were greeting each one individually. Kryler was struck by the sight. She seemed in harmony with the world around her, quiet yet commanding attention with every gesture. "Good morning, Prince Kryler," she said with a gentle smile. "I hope you slept well." Kryler hesitated for a moment before responding. "Good morning. Yes, I slept. And you?" His voice sounded uncertain even to himself. "I slept well, thank you," Celine replied. Her eyes, bright and expressive, seemed to look straight through him, as if she could see the turmoil in his mind. Kryler felt a little uncomfortable under her gaze, but he quickly reminded himself to maintain composure. They walked together along the winding garden paths, surrounded by exotic plants that glowed faintly under Virion sunlight. The air was fragrant and crisp, filled with the hum of alien insects and the gentle trickle of water from the crystal fountains. For a moment, Kryler allowed himself to relax. This garden, normally a place of calm, seemed alive with possibility. "I heard a lot about your planet," Kryler said cautiously. "Earthia. I never imagined I would meet someone from there." Celine nodded. I know it is unusual for a Virion prince to marry a human alien, but I am not here to change who you are. I only wish to learn and share. Kryler studied her carefully. She spoke with honesty, yet there was a quiet strength in her words that he could not ignore. Unlike many nobles he had met, she did not speak to impress or manipulate. Her demeanor was natural, sincere, and confident. As they continued walking, a sudden commotion broke out near one of the palace fountains. A young Virion child had slipped while chasing a small robotic pet, and he was about to fall into the water. Kryler froze for a moment, unsure how to react. But before he could move, Selene acted. With lightning-fast reflexes, she darted forward and caught the child in her arms, preventing what could have been a serious accident. Kryler watched in awe as she gently placed the child back on the ground. Her movements were precise, almost graceful, yet filled with undeniable power. "You're quick," Kryler said, genuinely impressed. Selene shrugged modestly. "I try to be careful. Accidents happen, but some can be prevented." Kryler felt a strange mix of admiration and envy. Here was a woman, a human alien who had shown more courage and skill in a single moment than some Virion nobles had in their entire lives. He realized that he had underestimated her. They continued their walk, and Kryler decided to test her knowledge of Virion culture, curious if she could adapt to their customs. "Our planet values strategy and foresight," he said. "Can you handle situations that require careful planning?" Selene's eyes sparkled. "I have trained in many disciplines on Earthia. Strategy, diplomacy, even survival in extreme conditions. I do not claim to know everything about Virion, but I am willing to learn quickly." Kryler felt his heart rate increase. She spoke with such confidence and clarity that he could not dismiss her as merely a stranger or a political arrangement. She was competent, intelligent, and, dare he admit it, intriguing. For the next few hours they explored the palace grounds together. Kryler showed her the ancient library, filled with records of Virion history and interstellar alliances. Selene listened intently, asking insightful questions and commenting thoughtfully on the knowledge she encountered. She was curious but not intrusive, respectful yet not submissive. At one point, Kryler brought her to the training grounds. He wanted to see if she could handle the physical demands of a Virion court. Selene observed the training exercises with keen interest, her eyes scanning every movement. When invited to participate, she moved with remarkable agility, adapting quickly to the unfamiliar techniques. Kryler noticed how she combined human flexibility with Virion strength, creating an unusual yet effective style. "You are impressive," Kryler said, unable to hide his surprise. Selene smiled. "I have learned to adapt. In my world, adaptation is key to survival." As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the palace, Kryler and Selene found themselves seated by a quiet fountain. The earlier tension between them had softened. They spoke of dreams, hopes, and the challenges of their respective worlds. Kryler discovered that Selene had faced prejudice and doubt, yet she had grown resilient and resourceful. She had survived challenges that he could barely imagine, and her determination inspired a reluctant respect within him. "You are different from what I expected," Kryler admitted. I don't know, that you would be strange, maybe weak, but you are not." Selene tilted her head slightly, her expression thoughtful. "I understand. Many people judge what they do not know, but I hope with time we can understand each other better." For the first time since his father's announcement, Kryler felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this marriage, though forced, could lead to something meaningful. He still had doubts, fears, and questions, but he could not deny that Selene had left a strong impression on him. Just as they were about to leave, a small alarm sounded across the palace. A minor security alert had been triggered near one of the palace gates. Kryler instinctively moved to investigate, but Selene was already ahead. Analyzing the situation with sharp precision, together, they discovered that a small group of rogue visitors had attempted to sneak into the palace, seeking to steal rare artifacts. While the palace guards quickly handled the situation, Kryler realized that Selene's quick thinking and calm demeanor had prevented potential disaster. "That was remarkable," Kryler said, catching his breath. "You didn't hesitate and you knew exactly what to do." Selene shrugged. "I have faced dangers before. It is important to stay calm and act decisively." As night fell, Kryler returned to his chambers, his mind racing. He had spent the day observing Selene, learning her character and seeing her capabilities firsthand. The woman his father had forced upon him was no longer a vague stranger. She was intelligent, strong, and capable. She had shown courage, quick thinking, and adaptability, qualities Kryler deeply valued. Yet despite these positive impressions, Kryler could not ignore his feelings of frustration. The marriage was still arranged, and the pressure of duty weighed heavily on him. He knew he had to balance his personal feelings with the expectations of his family and his people. As he gazed out at the night sky, dotted with the lights of distant planets, Kryler realized that Selene had already changed the way he thought about his future. She was not just a human-alien hybrid to be tolerated. She was a potential ally, a challenge, and perhaps, over time, a companion. For now, Kryler decided he would keep an open mind. Tomorrow would bring new interactions, new challenges, and the opportunity to learn more about Selene. And perhaps, in time, he would discover that this forced arrangement could lead to something far greater than he had ever imagined. The days after Kryler's first meeting with Selene were quiet, but the calm was deceptive. Kryler had begun to see her in a new light, intelligent, courageous, and unexpectedly resourceful. But he could not forget the burden of the arranged marriage. Meanwhile, whispers in the palace hinted at growing tension among the nobles. Some saw Selene's arrival as an opportunity to manipulate Kryler or even undermine the king. It began with subtle signs. Documents mysteriously went missing from the archives. Guards reported strange movements at night. Minor disputes between nobles, which usually ended quickly, began to escalate. Kryler noticed the change, but he wasn't sure if it was his imagination or a real threat. Selene, always observant, noticed it too. She pointed out unusual patterns in the palace routines and suggested a careful review of the palace security systems. "Something is not right," she said quietly. "We must be vigilant. Your father's enemies will try to exploit anything unusual." Kryler nodded, though part of him still struggled to trust her completely. She was new to his world, after all, but he could not ignore her sharp instincts and attention to detail. He decided to follow her advice. That evening, Kryler and Selene reviewed the palace's security logs together. Selene's eyes scanned the data quickly, noticing patterns that Kryler had overlooked. "Look here," she said, pointing to a series of entries. "These minor disturbances are connected. Someone is testing the palace defenses, looking for weaknesses." Kryler frowned. "But who would do this? And why?" Selene paused. "It could be the rogue nobles. They have always wanted more influence, and they see your marriage as a chance to act. They may try to destabilize the palace while you are distracted." The realization hit Kryler like a shock. The palace he had always thought of as safe, orderly, and untouchable was now under threat. And worse, his own marriage, the one he had resisted, was part of the target. The next day, Kryler began to train more closely with Selene, not in combat alone, but in strategy and planning. They mapped out possible weak points in the palace and ran simulations of different attacks. Selene's human-alien heritage gave her unique advantages. Her senses were sharper, her reflexes quicker, and her thinking unconventional in ways that Kryler could not anticipate. "You think too linearly sometimes," Selene said gently, as Kryler laid out a defensive plan. "Try to consider unexpected angles. The enemy may not act as we expect." Kryler realized she was right. He had been trained to rely on methodical logic and tradition, but Selene approached problems creatively. Watching her work, he began to appreciate the value of her perspective. They complemented each other in ways he had never experienced with any other Virion. Meanwhile, the palace rumors continued to grow. Some nobles openly expressed doubt about Selene's abilities, calling her a strange outsider. Others whispered that Kryler would be manipulated by his bride. Kryler ignored most of these comments, focusing instead on the emerging threat. But he could not deny that Selene's presence was changing the dynamics of the court. One evening, as Kryler and Selene were walking through the palace corridors, they overheard a conversation that confirmed their fears. Two nobles were discussing plans to infiltrate the royal vault and steal ancient artifacts, hoping to use the theft to embarrass the king and gain power. Kryler's heart pounded. "We need to act quickly," he whispered to Selene. Selene nodded. "We cannot alert everyone yet. If the nobles know we are aware, they may move faster. We need a careful approach." Together, they devised a plan to protect the vault without revealing their knowledge. Celine used her hybrid abilities to detect subtle signs of tampering, while Kryler coordinated with a select few loyal guards. They worked in secret, testing every entry point and preparing contingencies. The night of the attempted infiltration arrived. The rogue nobles had underestimated the vigilance of Kryler and Celine. As the intruders tried to access the vault, they were intercepted by the duo and a small team of guards. Celine's speed and strength proved invaluable. She moved through the corridors like a shadow, disabling traps and stopping intruders before they could act. Kryler, observing her, felt a mix of admiration and relief. He realized that he had misjudged the situation. Celine was not just capable, she was exceptional. Together they were stronger than anyone had expected. After the confrontation, the palace was quiet again. The rogue nobles had been exposed and the artifacts remained safe. The king praised Kryler for his leadership, but also acknowledged Celine's vital role. "Your alliance is proving to be valuable," he said. "Not just for diplomacy, but for the safety of this palace and our people." Kryler nodded, feeling a growing respect for Celine. He still struggled with the idea of a forced marriage, but he could no longer deny her importance. She had proven herself under pressure, and her abilities had saved lives. In the days that followed, Kryler and Celine continued to work closely. They trained together, planned defenses, and learned about each other's strengths and weaknesses. Kryler discovered that Celine had a keen sense of observation, unmatched memory, and an ability to anticipate danger. Celine, in turn, learned about Virion culture, the political nuances of the palace, and Kryler's personal challenges as a prince. Through these experiences, Kryler began to see the potential of their partnership. He realized that a successful alliance required more than duty. It required trust, respect, and understanding. And slowly he started to respect Celine not only as a capable ally, but also as a person with unique insights and strengths. One evening, as they reviewed their defensive plans, Kryler spoke quietly. "I didn't expect this. I thought this marriage would be a burden, a duty. But working with you, it feels different. You make me think differently, act differently." Selena looked at him thoughtfully. "I understand your feelings. This is a new situation for both of us. But sometimes challenges bring people together in unexpected ways." Kryler nodded, feeling a spark of hope. Perhaps this marriage, once feared and resented, could become something meaningful. He did not yet know what the future held, but he could see the potential for trust, friendship, and perhaps even something deeper. As night fell, Kryler stood on his balcony, gazing at the distant stars. The threat of rogue nobles was not entirely gone, but he felt more confident knowing Celine was by his side. The forced marriage that had once seemed like a prison was beginning to feel like a partnership, one built on mutual respect and shared challenges. He realized that the journey with Celine had just begun, and that together they could face any danger, uncover hidden threats, and navigate the complexities of palace politics. For the first time, Kryler felt that his future was not entirely dictated by duty. It was a path that he and Celine could shape together. And as he watched the twin moons of Virion rise into the night sky, Kryler understood something profound. Strength, intelligence, and courage came in many forms. Celine was a reminder that appearances could be deceiving, that alliances could be unexpected, and that even a forced marriage could become a source of growth and discovery. The night was quiet, but Kryler's mind was alive with possibilities. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, and new opportunities to learn from each other. And he knew deep down that he and Celine were ready to face them, together. The days following the thwarted palace infiltration were tense but transformative. Kryler and Celine had grown closer, their shared experiences in protecting the palace forming the foundation of a new understanding. What had begun as forced duty now showed the beginnings of partnership. Yet Kryler knew that trust could not be forced. It had to be earned. And he remained cautious. The morning began like any other, with the palace bathed in soft sunlight and the faint hum of distant hovercrafts moving across the royal grounds. Kryler found himself walking toward the gardens, hoping to meet Celine for a morning training session. When he arrived, she was already there, observing the alien flora with the same quiet grace that had impressed him from the start. "Good morning, Kryler," Celine said, turning to smile. "Are you ready for today's training?" Kryler nodded, though he felt a small tension in his chest. Training had become more than physical exercise. It was a way for them to understand each other. Celine's abilities were impressive. Her agility, strength, and quick thinking made her a formidable partner. But more than that, he was starting to see the layers beneath her calm exterior. Determination, curiosity, and a quiet sense of humor. They began with the training exercises Kryler had designed. At first, the drills focused on reflexes, strategy, and coordination. Celine adapted quickly, sometimes even outperforming Kryler's expectations. Her movements were precise yet fluid, a unique blend of human flexibility and virion strength. Kryler watched her carefully, noting how she responded to challenges, how she adapted, and how she remained calm under pressure. "You're improving faster than I expected," Kryler said, a faint smile breaking his usually serious demeanor. Celine chuckled softly. "I have to. It is not enough to be strong. One must be prepared for anything." After the training session, they walked through the palace corridors, discussing tactics and the recent threats. Kryler found himself opening up in ways he had not before. He shared his frustrations with palace politics, his fears of being manipulated by the rogue nobles, and his doubts about his role as a prince. Celine listened without judgment, offering insights that were thoughtful and practical. "You cannot face these challenges alone," she said gently. "Even the strongest leaders need allies who understand their perspective and can support them. That is what partnership means." Kryler paused, considering her words. He realized she was right. In his past, he had relied mostly on advisors who offered expertise but lacked personal loyalty. Celine was different. She was not merely an ally. She was someone who could understand him, someone whose intelligence and courage complemented his own. The afternoon brought an unexpected test. During a routine patrol of the palace grounds, they discovered a hidden passage that had been used by the rogue nobles to enter the palace undetected. Kryler's heart raced as he realized how close they had come to another potential threat. Celine examined the passage carefully, noting weak points, hidden traps, and signs of recent use. "This passage could be used again," Celine said seriously. "We need to secure it and monitor it continuously. If the nobles realize we know, they may change their approach." Kryler nodded. "We can't underestimate them. They're clever, and they will exploit any weakness." Together they devised a plan to guard the passage discreetly. Celine suggested using subtle surveillance methods, while Kryler coordinated with trusted palace guards to increase patrols without alerting the rogue nobles. Their collaboration was seamless, their skills complementing each other perfectly. Kryler began to understand that trust was not just about personal feelings. It was about relying on each other's strengths in critical moments. Over the next several days, Kryler and Celine spent more time together outside of training and strategy. They explored the palace gardens, shared stories of their childhoods, and exchanged knowledge about their respective worlds. Kryler learned about Celine's life on Earthia, her struggles, her resilience, and her determination to succeed despite prejudice. Celine learned about virion culture, the responsibilities of royalty, and the delicate balance of political alliances. One afternoon, as they rested by a fountain, Kryler asked, "Celine, do you ever feel out of place here?" "I know my world is very different from yours," Celine smiled softly. "At first, yes. Everything was unfamiliar. The customs, the expectations, even the air felt different. But I have learned that understanding takes time. I focus on learning, observing, and adapting. That is how I survive and grow." Kryler was struck by her resilience. She did not complain or dwell on discomfort. She faced challenges head-on and used them as opportunities to learn. He realized that this perspective was something he could learn from as well. Their growing friendship was tested when a new threat emerged. A neighboring planet, jealous of Virion's technological advancements, sent a covert delegation to the palace, claiming to negotiate trade but secretly attempting to gather intelligence for sabotage. The palace council was unaware of the true intentions, but Kryler and Celine quickly noticed inconsistencies in the delegation's behavior. "We cannot trust them," Celine whispered to Kryler. "They are watching, testing, and trying to manipulate information." Kryler agreed. They devised a subtle plan to monitor the delegation while maintaining the appearance of normal negotiations. Celine's keen observational skills allowed them to detect subtle codes and signals that would have been invisible to others. Kryler coordinated with palace security to discreetly track the delegates without alerting them. Over the course of several days, Kryler and Celine gathered enough evidence to reveal the delegation's true intentions. When confronted, the delegates had no choice but to retreat, leaving the palace secure. The experience strengthened the bond between Kryler and Celine. They had faced a new challenge together, relying on trust, communication, and each other's unique skills. As the evening settled over Virion, Kryler and Celine walked through the palace gardens, reflecting on the day's events. Kryler felt a sense of admiration he could no longer deny. Celine was not just a capable ally. She was someone he could rely on in the most difficult situations. "You've changed my perspective, Celine," Kryler said quietly. "I thought this marriage would be a burden, but I see now that it could be something more, something meaningful." Celine's eyes softened. "I am glad you feel that way. Trust and friendship take time. We are learning from each other, and that is a start. Whatever the future holds, we can face it together." For the first time, Kryler felt a sense of peace. He realized that he no longer viewed Celine as merely a political arrangement or a stranger. She had become a partner, someone whose presence made him stronger and more confident. The palace, with all its pressures and expectations, suddenly felt less intimidating. That night, Kryler stood on his balcony, gazing at the stars. He thought about the journey so far, the initial shock of the arranged marriage, the first awkward meetings, the challenges they had faced together, and the trust that was slowly building. He understood that their relationship was no longer defined by duty alone. It was evolving into something deeper, founded on respect, understanding, and shared experience. Celine, in her own chamber, reflected on the same journey. She had arrived in a world foreign and challenging, yet she had found an unexpected ally in Kryler. Their partnership had grown through trials and shared challenges, and she felt a sense of connection that went beyond mere obligation. Together, they had faced threats, uncovered secrets, and protected the palace. Together, they had begun to build trust, laying the foundation for friendship and perhaps, in time, something even greater. And as the twin moons of Virion rose high into the night sky, Kryler and Celine each understood one simple truth. The bond they were forming was not just about duty or survival. It was about partnership, respect, and the courage to face the future together, no matter what challenges awaited them. The morning light of Virion streamed through the palace windows, illuminating the halls with a golden glow. Kryler awoke with a sense of purpose he had never felt before. The days of doubt and hesitation were behind him. Celine had proven herself time and again, not only as a capable ally but as someone he could trust completely. Their shared victories and the dangers they had faced together had transformed his perspective on duty, partnership, and even the future of their arranged marriage. Kryler found Celine in the palace gardens, practicing precision exercises with an unfamiliar device she had brought from Earthia. The device projected holographic images of targets, and Celine moved with remarkable accuracy, her movements swift, calculated, and precise. Kryler paused to watch, admiring her focus and skill. "You are improving," he said with a smile, approaching her. "But you always seem to take things further than expected." Celine turned and smiled. "I am learning from you as well. Strategy and observation are your strengths. Together we complement each other." Kryler nodded, realizing that this simple statement held profound truth. Their strengths had always been different, yet together, they created a balance that made them formidable. It was no longer just about survival or protecting the palace. It was about trust, friendship, and mutual respect. However, peace rarely lasted long in the royal palace. That day, a messenger arrived with urgent news. A faction of rogue nobles, angry at their failed schemes, had allied with outside mercenaries. Their plan was to storm the palace during a formal ceremony, seize control, and destabilize the kingdom. This was the threat Kryler and Celine had anticipated, yet its immediacy made it dangerous. Kryler's mind raced. He turned to Celine. "This is it. The final test. Are you ready?" Celine's eyes sparkled with determination. "I have never been more ready." The palace was quickly prepared for defense. Guards were positioned, emergency protocols were activated, and escape routes were secured. Kryler and Celine worked seamlessly, directing the palace's defenses and coordinating the guards. Every move was calculated, every plan meticulously executed. When the rogue nobles and mercenaries arrived, chaos erupted in the main courtyard. But Kryler and Selene remained calm. They moved with precision, their actions synchronized as if they had trained together for years. Selene used her agility to intercept attackers, her strength surprising even the Virion guards. Kryler directed the strategy, predicting enemy movements and guiding the defense. At one critical moment, a group of mercenaries tried to breach the inner palace gates. Kryler realized that if they succeeded, the throne itself could be in danger. Without hesitation, Selena leapt forward, using her hybrid strength and reflexes to block the intruders. Kryler followed, leading the guards in a coordinated counterattack. The battle was intense but brief. The rogue nobles and mercenaries, overwhelmed by the palace's defenses and the skill of Kryler and Selene, were forced to retreat. The courtyard was filled with cheers as the victory became clear. The palace was secure once again. After the fight, the king personally approached them. His eyes were filled with pride. Kryler, Selene, you have both shown courage, intelligence, and unwavering determination. You have protected this palace and its people. Your partnership is commendable. Kryler felt a sense of pride, but more than that, he felt gratitude. It was Selene who made the difference, he said. Her abilities, her intelligence, and her calm under pressure saved many lives today. Selene smiled softly. We worked together. That is what made us successful. As the day passed, Kryler and Selene reflected on the journey they had shared. What had begun as a forced marriage had evolved into a true partnership. They had faced danger, uncovered threats, and protected the people they cared about. They had learned from each other, grown together, and formed a bond built on respect, trust, and shared experience. That evening, the palace prepared for the marriage ceremony. This time, however, the event felt different for Kryler. He did not approach it with dread or reluctance. Instead, he approached it with a sense of hope and choice. The woman he was to marry was no longer a stranger, no longer someone imposed upon him. She was Selene, a capable, intelligent, and courageous individual, someone he could respect and trust. The ceremony was beautiful. The palace halls were filled with friends, allies, and dignitaries from across the galaxy. The twin moons of Virion cast a soft glow through the windows, illuminating the event with an ethereal light. Kryler stood at the altar waiting for Selene with a calm but excited heart. When Selene entered, Kryler felt a wave of admiration and warmth. She walked with grace, her eyes meeting his with quiet confidence. In that moment, all the fears and doubts of the past seemed insignificant. They had faced challenges together, and that shared experience had forged a connection stronger than mere duty or obligation. The ceremony proceeded with elegance and simplicity. Vows were exchanged, not as formalities, but as promises of partnership, respect, and shared life. Kryler spoke with sincerity, acknowledging Selene's courage, intelligence, and support. Selene, in turn, expressed her respect for Kryler's leadership, integrity, and openness to learning. As they completed the ceremony, the crowd erupted in applause. But Kryler and Selene did not focus on the noise around them. They focused on each other, understanding that the journey they had begun together was just the start of a new chapter. Later, as they walked through the palace gardens under the soft light of the twin moons, Kryler spoke quietly. Selene, I want you to know, I never imagined this marriage would feel like this. You've changed everything. You've shown me that partnership is about trust, respect, and learning from each other. Selene smiled. I feel the same, Kryler. We started this journey unexpectedly, but we have grown together. I am glad we faced every challenge side by side. For the first time, Kryler felt a sense of true contentment. The future was still uncertain. There would be challenges, political pressures, and new threats. But he no longer faced them alone. Selene was beside him not as a stranger, but as a partner, friend, and equal. The night was quiet yet alive with possibilities. Kryler and Selene walked together, hand in hand, ready to face the future. The palace, once a symbol of duty and expectation, now represented hope, unity, and shared purpose. In the days that followed, Kryler and Selene continued to strengthen their bond. They trained together, explored new regions of the palace, and discussed plans for the future. Kryler introduced Selene to new diplomatic challenges, seeking her perspective on matters of trade, alliances, and governance. Celine's insights were invaluable, her perspective often revealing solutions Kryler had not considered. Through these experiences, Kryler realized that this marriage, once forced and resented, was now a source of strength. It was a partnership built on mutual respect, trust, and shared experience. Celine was no longer an outsider. She was an integral part of his life, his decisions, and his future. As they stood together on a balcony overlooking the city of Virion, Kryler spoke softly. "Celine, I cannot promise that every day will be easy, but I can promise that we will face everything together. And I choose to do that not because of duty, but because I want to." Celine's eyes shone with warmth. "And I choose the same, Kryler. Together we can face anything. Together we can grow, learn, and protect the people we care about." The twin moons reflected in their eyes, symbolizing the harmony of two worlds, two lives, and two hearts coming together. Kryler and Celine stood united, ready to navigate the challenges and joys that lay ahead. The story that began with doubt and fear had transformed into one of hope, partnership, and the promise of a new beginning. For Kryler, the journey of understanding, trust, and friendship had revealed a profound truth. Strength, courage, and intelligence could be found in unexpected places, and sometimes the most surprising alliances became the most powerful. And as the night sky stretched across Virion, Kryler and Celine knew that the future was theirs to shape, together.